going to have our weekly focus on mental health and well-being. And in tonight's Mind Matters with Dr Sian, we're looking at what it's like to live with an eating disorder or have someone in your life who's struggling in the run-up to Christmas, when all the talk, all the ads, all the attention seems to be on eating. What happens if that very thought makes you anxious, unhappy and ill? Hope Virgo developed anorexia in childhood. She describes herself now as recovering, and she campaigns to bring awareness to the complexities around disordered eating. I caught up with her earlier and started by asking her about the pressure she has felt around food at Christmas time.
I remember when I first developed anorexia, I was about 12, 13, and Christmas became this just really fearful time. It was full of stress, there was so much anxiety, and I think it's got worse then probably for the next 4 years when I was living with the illness. And even as I started my recovery, there was a heightened level of stress, particularly at home. I think my parents were often trying to watch what I was eating, kind of monitoring what I was having. Yeah. And that constantly being watched, I found really, really difficult to navigate.
And I imagine as well for your parents, perhaps a bit of a mixture of emotions, because they want to help and they don't quite know how to help, but also frustration maybe. Anger sometimes comes into this as well, doesn't it? What did you experience emotionally in that time?
Yeah, there was so many different emotions, if I'm honest. There was a huge amount of anger and frustration from my parents, but also I had those frustrations at myself as well. And I remember pretty much every single Christmas morning I'd be like, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it a really good day, I'm going to try and switch off the eating disorder for the day and just see what happens. But then inevitably it's still there, it's still dominating your thinking. And for me, it then became wrapped up in trying to get really, really involved in food and then kind of ruminating a lot for kind of hours afterwards, and then maybe having an argument in the evening about what I was going to have for dinner and then feeling guilty about that.
And so when did you think to yourself, when did you notice that thinking pattern and think, something's got to shift here?
So I think it probably took a few years out of hospital, actually. So I got admitted to a mental health hospital when I was about 17 and spent a year in treatment, learning a lot about myself, about the eating disorder, about kind of what it was doing for me, and kind of those started to make those steps to get well. But I think it was a couple of years after that where I was like, actually, I don't want to have a future where I'm still finding this really stressful, where food is dictating my feelings and my emotions, and I'm still using it to serve that purpose. And so I had to have that shift then. And then since then, it's basically just been every Christmas trying to challenge a lot of that thinking and challenge those behaviours and calling myself out on stuff, like checking in with myself. And a really big one actually is just trying to create my own traditions as well, so it becomes less intense and less focused on the food.
What can you do if you're watching this programme tonight and you're fearful of Christmas? And what can you do if you're watching this programme and you love someone who you want to help but you don't know how?
So I think it's always really important to have a plan in place, and that plan will probably look slightly different for different people depending on where you're at in your recovery. But it might be like, actually, I'm going to have my meals at these times throughout the day, I'm going to have this for lunch, this for breakfast, and really structuring it out. I think always important if you're at the early kind of days in recovery to realise that it's okay to have a slightly different Christmas meal if that's what works for you. I know in my family when I started recovery, I'd have like a backup meal available just in case I found the Christmas lunch too difficult. I think we need to make sure we're not planning everything around food, so having activities and games where there isn't that focus on food so that that individual again can be really involved. I think distractions are always really important, and making sure that you have that distractions after a meal time, in the run up to a meal time, and just communication is key. I think so often with eating disorders, they really thrive in that secrecy. And I know for me that mine often would kind of kick in if I didn't feel like I was being heard or I was struggling to communicate. So it's like identify a couple of people that are maybe around you, but also people remotely, that if you're really struggling on the day, you can just think, actually, do you know what, I just need to reach out to this person.
What does recovery look to you now? How are you now?
I think I'm doing really well, actually. I think over the pandemic, I had a lot more time to kind of think about where I was at with things, and I definitely got to a point where I just settled at where I was at and was kind of like, it's fine, I'm going to always be like this, I'm always going to have some belief systems around food. But over the last year or so, every day I've been really challenging a lot of that thinking. And I'm now able, even when I'm triggered by something, to be like, actually, this is what the eating disorder might want to do, but this is how I'm going to respond. So I think I've probably got like 1 or 2% left to go. I really believe that everyone can make a full recovery. And for me, it's like I've just got a couple more steps to go to hit that place where I am fully recovered.
And you're married. Lots of things have been happening for you.
Yeah, it's been quite a full-on year.
It's been a full-on year. You've been doing loads of campaigns. And, of course, you're raising awareness for other people as well. I hope you have an amazing Christmas. And thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Hope Virgo speaking to me there. If you need help and support with anything that we discussed there are loads of places you can turn to, and there are just a few options on your screen now.